So far, we have covered models for time series with only random variation. So that would be the moving average, weighted moving average, and exponential smoothing. Then we looked at a couple of models for this series where we have trend and random variation. Okay, so now we're going to look at seasonal variations and random, seasonal and random, and then we will look at seasonal, trend, and random. Okay, they both involve computing what are called seasonal indices. The seasonal indices for a multiplicative model, okay, so remember we did multiplicative or additive. So we're going to look at multiplicative model where you have a trend forecast or a base forecast, if you will, deseasonalized forecast, and then you will multiply that deseasonalized forecast with a seasonal index. So if the seasonal index value is 1, then there is no difference from the average of all seasons. But if the index is greater than 1, so that means it is a high season. So you are adjusting for seasonality upwards. If the index is less than 1, then it's lower than average, so you're adjusting for seasonality lower. Okay. So our task is to come up with the seasonal index values, and when you have only random fluctuations along with seasonality, then we will use the simple averaging technique, overall average. But when there is trend also along with seasonality, then we have to take that component into account. Okay, simple averaging won't work because the average will include trend as well. So we have to do what is called centered moving average approach. So first, let's look at a case where there is only seasonal and random, no trend. Then we will be using the overall average approach. Okay, we're going to use the telephone answering machines example. We have sales data for past 2 years. Okay, and again, for us to be able to compute seasonal index values, we have to have at least 2 full cycles of data. If all you have is one cycle, so then there is no way of computing seasonal index from that. Well, it would be very unreliable, at least in the averaging case. If all the data point that you have is one per season, so you must have 2 full seasons. So here we have monthly seasons going through from January through December, and we have 2 annual data. Okay, so we have to now use averaging, and we are assuming no trend. So we're going to use averaging to come up with the index values. So let's head on over to Excel. So let's first set up the data. All right. So what we're going to do is to find what is the average for each month. Okay, so this will be average of these two. Okay, if you have more than 2 years, so if you have 4 years of data, then you will average over 4 years. Okay, so it need not be just 2 years. 2 years are the minimum. Okay, so now, so these are the averages for each month. Next, you find the average monthly demand, the overall average. So okay, so that would be the average of these values. Okay, so now see it got cut off, so we can adjust it like that, then it'll appear, the whole thing will appear. So this is the average of these. Okay, this is also the average. If you find the average of all of that directly, that will also be the same thing. Okay, so here when we average all of these values, now you've removed all traces of seasonality. So this is the completely deseasonalized value for average monthly sales with all seasonality erased out. Okay, and these are the monthly averages. So when you compare the monthly average with the overall average, then you see that there is seasonal variability. So you can compute seasonal index by taking the monthly average or seasonal average. If you have 4 seasons, if it's quarters 1, 2, 3, 4, then it will be quarterly average. So the seasons average divided by the overall average. An overall average should come from the same cell for month after month after month. So that needs to be absolute referenced. Okay. So that's the seasonal index. It's a little bit less than 1. So this is a season that is lower in demand compared to the typical average. All right. So there are some which are more than 1. There are some which are less than 1. Now, how do you use these seasonal indices for forecast of year 3? Okay. So now for that, we have to first forecast year 3 demand. Okay. So year 3 demand here, the textbook gives it as 1200. Okay. So here it says, for example, suppose we expected a third year's annual demand for answering machines to be 1200. Okay. How do you come up with that? So maybe annual demand, you can use moving average or exponential smoothing to develop that forecast. So once that is known, so third year demand is 1200, right? So that means you divide that by 12, then you get 100 as the monthly average. So this is without applying any seasonality. It's 100 per month, 1200 for the year. Now you can multiply this. This is where the multiplicative model comes into play. So you take the deseasonalized or forecast without seasonality, monthly forecast of 100, and it should come from C24 for each and every month, and then you multiply by the seasonal index. Then that is your forecast. So I'm gonna, okay, so now I'll put the border back. Okay, so that's how you develop your seasonal index and use the seasonal index for forecasting, and this will work when all you have in the time series are seasonality and random fluctuations, no trend.